recorded all of them from the month of September or something
Yeah.
like that.
Uh-huh.
So when you record all the episodes beforehand and then you upload them all at once?
Yeah, yeah. So like on October, I uploaded all October 1st. So my upload like storage space, I can only upload so many minutes or megs or whatever, which really makes it hard for like when I have a lot of files, the I feel like you've done stuff with music and that type of stuff, right? Like
Yep.
when you got yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you got like a lot of stems, like that track size gets big. It doesn't matter how you compress it at the end, like the master is still a big file.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so I upload as many as I can ahead of time, trying to plan out how big are my file sizes. And I add it up. I'm like, all right, this one needs to get uploaded at the end of September. And then I'll throw these five. Usually it's the months that have 5 weeks. And I'm like, all right, this needs a little more planning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've uploaded the entire month of October. And then on November, I have all the episodes already edited because I transcribe all these as well. So, because some people can't listen, but that doesn't mean they can't benefit from maybe something that was said. So, they're all transcripted on the website. Well, I think there's 18 or so that aren't quite there because I started at episode 88 and then realized you can't just transcribe episode 88. That's weird. So then I went back and so I started trying to transcribe in real time and all of the other ones. So there's like, I don't know, 2 million words. And that's not even an exaggeration because every hour of episode that's transcribed is about 8,200 words, like 8,200 words or so,
When do you have
roughly.
time to do all that?
I only sleep like 5 or 6 hours a night. So, and then like at lunch breaks at work, I work on it because I genuinely enjoy doing it. So like I could be, I don't know, doing something else. But yeah, mostly I just read about the Bible and edit this. So, um, yeah, yeah. Well, good.
Uh,
Alaman, right?
that's the one, man.
Did it. Here we go. Lo Alaman,
That's good.
right? Did it? Yes. Perfect. Great. How are you doing, man? How's your evening?
Doing good. Doing
Yeah.
good.
For those that haven't listened, we've been going at this now for like a few minutes and I've enjoyed it already. I should have hit record earlier and I didn't. And I'm sorry for those that aren't privy to the stuff beforehand. However, man, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about you. So you're in Texas, which I just found out. I didn't know that. And I want to be real clear. I try to do very minimal research outside of reading whatever I'm talking to you about or listening, so that I can be as ignorant as possible because I find it makes for better conversations.
Think so.
So tell us what makes you you, man. What makes you tick, etc.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I'm a dad, a husband. I like Jesus a lot, and in light of liking Jesus and getting paid to talk about him, I'm technically a minister. Not like an actual pastor or whatever, because I'm a part of like a Methodist church. It may take like they have a lot of like red tape as to who actually is or is not a pastor. So not a pastor. I like Jesus and get to preach every now and then. And yeah, I'm an artist. I traveled around pre-COVID, just talking about Jesus, doing an art form called spoken word poetry, which is basically writing poetry down and putting some flavor on it and saying it out loud. Which has been it was a cool hobby before, but it's kind of turned into a ministry of its own, which has been a huge blessing to my life and my family. And yeah, man, it's fun. So things that make me tick would obviously be writing. I like art. I like rap. I like music. Um, I'm more of a basketball guy than a football guy. Previous conversation that you guys are privy to, we were talking about football. Much more of an NBA dude. Born in LA, so I love the Lakers, but I'm a real Lakers fan, so I don't like LeBron. Uh, so there's a weird tension.
What
I'm
is a real Lakers fan?
man, that means you weren't a part of the bandwagon. You were down those 4 years where we sucked. You were still on board. You saw the farewell tour with Kobe, and you watched every game, and you saw us lose a bunch, but you were there. Um, yeah, man, like I bleed this stuff. But because of that, remember like 08, 09, they were doing those Kobe LeBron puppets. They're pitting them against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Having LeBron wearing purple and gold right now is just, it's not normal. It's not normal.
Come on, let him do it, man. Hey, so what is technically a minister? Like so you're applying for a job and they say, yeah, technically you're a minister, but we're not going to call you one. Like, what does that mean?
So I grew up in a context different than the one I'm currently working in. I grew up in an all black church, small CME in Mississippi.
What
So
is
like
CME?
ugly history. It used to be the Colored Methodist Episcopal. Now it's the Christian Methodist Episcopal. Uh,
Okay.
so it was a part of like the Methodist Church that broke off because blacks and white folks couldn't do life together well.
Right.
So there's that. So my church I grew up in, really, really small, really rural. And if you want to preach and be a pastor, you just be like, yo, I want to do that. And they kind of let you.
Mm.
And I'm currently serving in a much larger denomination that has a lot more kind of rigidity around what you can and cannot do without going to like seminary, without, being ordained. And so I have no desire for ordination. I have no money for seminary or a large enough interest to invest the time. And so, yeah, I get to do all the same stuff, except for I can't marry you, bury you, and I can't bless your bread and serve you wine, and it be the blood and body of our Savior.
So in our church, we'll let deacons. They don't say the words, but they're the people that are there when you come by in a pre-COVID world, which
Yeah.
is a weird way to timestamp the world. But I think that's going to be a thing for a long time. Like it would be our deacons only, but we're in a cooperative Baptist church. So I think we do what we want as Baptists. Like we literally like, yeah, we do our own thing. You be quiet. We do our thing. You
What
do
is
your thing.
cooperative Baptist? I haven't heard that one.
So the acronym CBF, I know there's a big chapter, maybe that's the right word, alliance group in Texas as well. So there's like regional Baptist churches that are all affiliated, and a lot of them are basically the ones that were like, yeah, we will have a female minister, because Phoebe's a thing, in the Bible and some of these other things. Matter of fact, my preach the other day, he was talking about something in, I think it was Corinthians, and Paul started talking about, like I told this woman, and she was basically, like when you were at her church, at her house, and she was ministering to you, like she said, I'm also now going to go forward. He's like, he said in the side, he's like, and that should just put all of that women can't be ministers thing right to bed. And then he just kept on going. Actually, I told him, I was like, that was a message right there. Like I needed all of that. But he was doing this whole, some of you support the president. I know this because you told me. Some of you can never. And I know this because you told, and he just kept doing the binaries. And he's like, and now I need you to hear me. But all of you, I'm going to need you to listen for a minute. It's like, I know this because you told me. It's a really good message. Yeah, it's on the internet somewhere. Anyhow, so the CBF, they basically broke off the SBC and basically said, yeah, we've got our own issues. Don't mishear that. Every congregation got their own issues. Every church and then every governing, but they don't really govern us. We mostly just kind of pool money to do some larger national type stuff. But yeah, they basically broke off the CBF, and then just a little more bad blood or whatever it's called. So there's even in Virginia, there's another organization underneath that is more of a local as opposed to statewide thing. And they're basically making us choose, from what I remember from the business meetings, of, well, you can't support any homosexuality at all. We're going to need you to take a firm stance. And based on your stance will be whether or not you can still continue to be in this organization. But we still want you to send your money. And I'm pretty sure one of our business meetings soon is going to be one of these, what are we doing? Because, at our church, we've got many homosexuals in the church. Some of them we've allowed to preach, and they have been powerful sermons. Like they brought a word, and it matters. You know what I mean? Like it matters.
Yeah.
Not why I brought you on. That's an entirely different conversation. That's the danger of not scripting any questions.
I love it though. I love it because that's conversation's real, bro. And what you're talking about, that's kind of why I try to lean into like that. Even your pastor kind of like, I don't know how to exist in the binary. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like the beauty of like artistry is like I get to kind of be in that in between, kind of open eyes and say, hey, don't forget nuance. And I know this is ugly, but it's also beautiful. And I know this is beautiful, but that's also ugly.
Yeah.
So yeah, man.
Yeah. So I wanted to just so you wrote a book, which for the life of me, I can't figure out who's publishing this book. I even tried the Google, and I'm usually good at the Google. It doesn't really matter who's publishing it. I'm thankful for them reaching out. However, the book is called, and I got it wrong a minute ago, and I don't want to get it wrong again. We sang a dirge, correct? We sang a dirge, yeah. What the heck is a dirge? That's not a word that we use. It's not on the radio. It's not a genre. Well, it is, but you know what I mean. Like, what is a dirge?
Yeah, so that line is a direct quote from Jesus in Matthew 11. And he's basically calling out all of those who are apathetic, but yet calling themselves followers of Yahweh. And he's pretty much saying, like, the church of the kingdom is a lot like you people, except for when the kids cry out and they want you to celebrate and to hang out with them, you do that. You see they're happy, you see they're joyous, and you celebrate the things that are worth celebrating. It's like when kids are crying out, singing sad songs. A dirge, which is a funeral song, he
Mm.
literally says kids are singing this funeral song. They're mourning. Something has happened, and they are devastated. They've lost something that is deeply personal to them. And you walk by and you don't mourn and you don't cry out, you don't lament with them. That's where you miss the kingdom. You have every ingredient for the kingdom of God, except for you don't know how to sing and dance. You don't know how to cry when it's time to cry. And so, yeah, Jesus is basically saying there's no room for apathy in the kingdom of heaven.
Mm.
There's no room for that cold-hearted, I'm so for my opinion, I'm so for my stance or my view, that when I see somebody of another stance or another view, I can't empathize, I can't cry, I can't dance. So yeah, the line that Jesus gets at, so we sang a dirge is like a bunch of kids crying out in a market square, and that to me feels a lot like growing up in a black church. And then bringing all that into the context of like working in a white church, like holding a lot of burden and lament and angst that I don't always feel welcome to share.
Mm.
Um, and when I do share, it's an awkward moment. Like I just definitely ruffle feathers, and that's not always great. And so yeah, trying to figure out how to live within, the tension of being black and Christian and an artist. And I feel like those three folds are who I am publicly to people, and most of my circles can tolerate about 2/3 of me.
Mm.
I can either be black and Christian, Christian and artist, artist and black, but all three aren't always welcome. And I think what we all kind of strive towards is a place where we can be fully ourselves.
Yeah.
This book is just kind of like an outcry of that.
Which one do you think is more often silence? Like which 2, 3 are dominant?
Depends on where I'm at, man. Depends on where I'm at. I was born in California, but I grew up in Mississippi. So again, vastly different spaces, vastly different experiences. And so my California family thinks I have a Southern accent. My Southern family thinks I have a California accent.
You don't have an accent at all.
I have nothing. I have literally nothing. I have literally nothing. But that's the thing, right? Is like it depends on where I'm at. People can tell that I'm other,
Yeah.
Which I feel like is most of the Black experience in general. I think all of us in some capacity feel it, but that's definitely the Black experience, at least mine.
Yeah. So I want to talk about your book, and I'm probably going to jump around a lot. So I hope you've got it in front of you or memorized, probably both. So
do you hear that?
Do what?
There's like a printer thing happening.
Are you printing something?
I don't think I am.
Is there paper coming out?
Oh no, it's dead now. Go for it.
That's the pastor printing from home. It's like remote print. So the book, and I'm going to try to summarize some of it, is I wasn't really ready to read it. Like when it came, I was like, I don't know who this person is, just being honest. And most people don't know me, and I think that's probably for the better. And then as I read it, I was like, I was talking with my friend Josh just this like tonight, because I reread the very first part, and I was at my son's karate reading through it because I want to make sure that I wasn't 100% ignorant for this evening, and was rereading back through the bookmarks from a month or so ago when I first started reading it, and I was not I sat it down, I was not prepared at oftentimes, enough so with the lady sitting next to me kept looking at me like because I was reading it on my phone, and I kept doing the whole just doing that whole thing. Yeah. So one of the things I wasn't really prepared from, so the book is like approaching a lens of like Black Lives Matter and like just a bunch of things that I wish we really didn't have to talk about. Like that shouldn't be a thing. And you referenced it earlier. I have no idea if we were recording that. I think we were, about, oddly enough, oftentimes you get Black churches and white churches, or white and Black people in the same churches, and they just can't seem to get along. And that's ridiculous and stupid. But I wasn't prepared for it, and I'm going to say his name wrong. Jeremy Mardis, I think. Is it? Yeah. First off, I was ashamed that I didn't even know who that was. I had to Google it, and then as I read it, I was like, and I think, I forget even the line you use. You're like, but where was your all lives matter when this happened? I don't think most people know that story, and I know, can you kind of, that was the first set down. I'm like, who is this kid? And then I felt so convicted, like, why don't I know this name? All the other names I know. Why don't I know this name?
Well, and that's what the artist's trying to do, is to pull out the conviction of not knowing him, but also the assumptions you have about him as you read it.
Mm.
But yeah, so Jeremy Martis is a little boy, 6 years old, who was killed by the police while he was sitting in the car with his dad. His father had got into an altercation with some police officers earlier in the week, and after coming from a bar, his dad is pulled over. The police officers draw their weapons. Jeremy's dad does not have a weapon in the car at the time, and they shout some commands at him and don't give much time for him to react to any of them, and then they just open fire. The dad lives. The dad survived the shooting, but the little boy, who was 6, was shot 5 times and he died. And the story is hard. It's a hard story no matter what. But when I heard it, when I first read the story, I was like, this is not unfamiliar to me. This is not a new story altogether. But then I found out he was a white boy. That just it was like I don't even know how to categorize what to do there. And so one of the lines in the poem is that it's a curse of the world that already has caskets your size. You died this black boy's death, and I don't know how my worldview can fit you in it, because you're not a part of the narrative. You're not a part of the Black Lives Matter narrative. You're also not a part of that conservative kind of staunch white narrative either. What do we do with you? And I think I hate that his life is a perfect analogy for where I think all of us are, but don't want to be and don't want to acknowledge that we are in. Is we don't have space for the genuine mourning that needs to take place in this country. We don't know how to.
Yeah. There's I'm going to quote this to you, and then I'd hope that you could take it further. So you say, and I can't even remember what chapter it's in, because just to be clear, my notes are in the notes app on my phone. So I didn't have paper with me because, as you saw, the basement down here, most of my paper ends up getting colored on and whatnot. So the only place that I know I can control is the notes app on my phone. So there's a part in here you say, for years I've been heartbroken by the church's silence on issues of racial injustice and its complacency with homogeneity in worship. And you've been studying, praying, and waiting for a time when Christians would be ready to deal with this division in our culture, or at least address it where it exists within congregations. And finally, it seemed like we were at a point where these issues couldn't be avoided, and we'd been forced to deal with the mess that we tried to sweep under the rug. Can you kind of give voice to what you're talking about when you say issues? Because I've ripped that entirely out of context, and then kind of how we swept it under the rug and kind of the implications of that.
Yeah. So I feel like when things happen, we call them issues. I'm gonna give different names to them as we go. When there are moments that kind of highlight systemic inequalities, and I'll call them inequalities intentionally, moments that highlight that there is something going on in the undercurrent of how we have dialogue around race. When things happen and, like, Paula White says the N-word, or a police officer kills a black person, the response is typically, these are black issues. And that narrative is really damaging for all parties involved, but it's damaging because one assumes that we were one before this happened, and then now that this has happened, the onus is on the victims to fix the oneness that's now been called into question. And so it's a weird kind of dynamic that I've felt my entire life. I feel like those around me have felt for quite some time. And so, yeah, there has to be some point where we can have conversation about, this is what this is. Elsewise, language like, systemic racism or white privilege, those are always like trigger words to sides that don't think there's an issue already. And for those who are very much believing that there's an issue, by and large minority communities, those issues can seem like, why are we just now talking about it? And so when I say issues being swept under the rug, I mean, I grew up in a town where I knew where I could not go. My uncle was a sheriff in Columbia, Mississippi. And there's a town right next to Columbia, Mississippi, Baxterville, where we legit could not drive at night. When our football team would go play football in Poplarville, we would drive through Baxterville, and they would hang like little stuffed monkeys in their yards. and make it clear that our bus couldn't stop there. And a lot of folks like to fantasize Mississippi as being this like exception. And I grew up there. I know Mississippi has some issues, but it's not just there. Uh, what's wild about that is when I mean by sweeping issues under the rug is that there are so many churches within that town that recognize what they recognize. I see the same thing I see, but because we are, in some ways, these issues are kind of like taboos or just like it is what it is kind of thing. It's rarely addressed or talked about, and so I think a lot of Black people bring a lot of trauma to these conversations, and there's an expectation for that trauma to be, compartmentalized in a separate place, and then have like, healthy dialogue around it. And I think a lot of white folks bring a lot of a strange reality, a strange perspective on what America is, and I would say even a fascination with the idea of America as being this holy place, this clean place, and it makes it really weird to have actual dialogue. When it does happen, I think it's a window into heaven. I think it's beautiful. But I don't think it happens nearly as often. And so when Ahmaud Arbery was killed, when the Breonna Taylor murder was brought to everybody's attention, when George Floyd died, all of this in the span of like 2 months, that I had just moved to a predominantly white church in a predominantly white neighborhood. And it's during COVID. I haven't met these people yet. And so I would hate to wear my lament that open in front of white folks. I don't know how they're going to receive it. And that's actually what started the writing of the book. Was I feel like I want to be as hurt and broken outwardly as I am inwardly, and I don't feel safe to do so. I don't know if my livelihood will be supported, which is really strange as like a minister, Like I don't know if my livelihood will be supported in me being hurt.
Yeah, there's you were talking about you listened to an episode prior on lament, and the reason I don't know which one that was is because I've done that topic 5 or 6 times. But I remember the first time that it came up was with Professor Soon-Chong Ra, and he got a line in there, and it stuck with me since. He said 2 things. One was about immigration and how it goes with the church, and the second was he's like, we forget that like 78 or 77 or something % of the whole Bible is all lament. He's like, we read like the 30% that isn't, and we're like, yay, we did. But he's like, the rest of it is all like, how long? Oh, it still sucks. It's books like Amos and all of the prophets being like, you still missed the point, and so I don't hear your worship, which has become like my Amos 5, 20 through 25 or so has been my scripture for the whole year. So that Jeremy Mardis bit there, the line that got me the most was where you say, welcome to this ugly club of names grieved only by us and by heaven. And that was the part where I had to set it down. I'm like, I don't know. Like I'm sitting there looking at all these kids, and I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And it just hits too close to home. I don't like to be emotional, and that's your fault. You did this. You did this. So you talk about playing games with your family. You talk about house rules. Yep. And this was just because I like sarcasm. So you talk about the game of Boston, which I haven't played since college. So I'm curious, not Boston. You talk about spades, which Boston is a thing you can do in there. See, I already did it wrong. So that's when you know you play spades. So I used to be really good. So I'm really curious, how often were you able to go Boston when you're playing house rules?
No, I'm not the one you want to play with, man.
You're not able to go Boston, or?
Oh, no. I'm saying you don't want to play against me. So and we have this thing like, and we have a thing in my family where like the poem's called house rules, but it should be called like trash talking. Like that's our love language, My freshman year in college, I came in like knowing how to play, like knowing how to play cards, and the trash talk was just like, I would spend nights 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm still up at Waffle House playing spades with friends. I should be doing homework. Probably should be studying.
It's math, though. It's math.
Come on, man. Yeah, I'm that guy with some spades, my guy. Oh my God.
I can remember when I learned the concept of Boston. My dad and mom were teaching it to me, and I was like, "Oh, you can." He's like, "Yeah, but it's not really about getting all the tricks. It's about humiliating the other person so that they don't have the confidence to like, I'm gonna go 3. You sure you're gonna go 3? All right, I'm gonna go 2. That's what I thought you were gonna go. you know,
I
kind
have
of
put
thing.
you in your place.
Yeah, yeah, we both know what's happening here.
Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about social media because I like how you approach it. You begin a poem talking about keyboards clicking and clacking, and I'm going to badly paraphrase it. But towards the tail end of that, you say that arguments don't work,
Mm.
and what we need to have instead is a generation filled with the Spirit of God. And that's a word, at least in my denomination, we don't use that often. Like Spirit of God is, yeah, we don't put hands up when we sing. You put your hands down. I'm uncomfortable because your hands are not down.
Yeah.
I think honestly, the fact that we can't sing because of COVID, people are even more comfortable. Like, yes, it's a concert. We're doing this.
Yeah.
So can you talk a bit about that? Like talking about Black Lives Matter, singing a dirge, missing the point of the whole party and celebration that Jesus is talking about with the kids, and like how we do that in social media, and what the heck is, what are you getting at when you mean Spirit of God? How does that all kind of go together?
Yeah. So I'm gonna give a nerdy theological answer and then try to make it make sense.
That's because you're technically a minister.
I mean, air quotes. You can't see them right now, but they're there. Um, so and I have a poem on this too. I think. Yeah, I think it's in the book. But back in Genesis 1, you have the spirit hovering over the tohu wabohu, the chaos, the disorder, and it's like, okay, God's near chaos. That's cool. That's nice to see. And that word for God's spirit is his breath. His breath is hovering over chaos, which is a really interesting picture. Next page over Genesis 2, you have God's spirit being breathed into the nostrils of a lifeless body. So the chaos isn't there, but there's no life in the shell, and the spirit, the breath enters into the body. You fast forward into Ezekiel, and the breath blows through a cavern of dead things, and it brings them back to life. This idea that death is the absence of breath, the absence of life. And yet God seems super into breathing life on dead things. Like he's super for it. It's like his shit. Then you have Jesus. He comes, breathes his breath over people, says receive the Holy Spirit. It's kind of a weird thing. Wouldn't be allowed to happen right now in COVID times. But the thing he does. The thing he does. And then he dies. And the scripture says he gives up the breath, like the breath of God leaves him, and he's a dead dude. And then the spirit brings him back to life. The breath comes back into a dead body. He's alive again. And then he breathes that life into the church, and the church is alive now. And so things that should not be alive, God puts life in them via his breath. It's this thing that animates us, that makes us human, makes us alive. And we're all for it. In the black church, when you catch the Holy Ghost, when the Spirit of God comes upon you, you dance, you sing, you cry, you like black people. I think in general are just like, I don't know. I think we all have some animatedness in all of us, no matter what skin color you are. But particularly in black church, it was one of the few places we could read, few places we could gather, one of the few places we could really hold joy. And so we never held back in the gathering. Like that was our place to interact and be fully alive, right? And so what happens? You have people who should be down and dead and stoic, and instead, when they're allowed to gather and they're calling on God, they come alive in a way that is powerful and vibrant and beautiful. So yeah, for me, I think that I'm so exhausted with trying to convince a dead a dead person that that this is an issue. Like I'm
Yeah.
tired of trying to argue a corpse back to life.
Yeah.
I believe I don't have a good track record of doing it, but God does. And so the prayer is that the Holy Spirit, the breath of God, would start to animate some people whose hearts are a little cold and dead to this particular conversation.
Yeah.
And this is Joel, the promise that the Holy Spirit is going to come and breathe life into all of us, and we become sons and daughters, and we wake up, we get hearts of flesh.
Yeah.
I think a lot of white and black and anything in between, brothers and sisters who have kind of grown callous and cold-hearted to a lot of these issues, both sides too, I would say. Because when I first started working for a white church, a lot of my black friends and family were like, "Why would you go work there?"
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there is some underlying tension within our communities, and I don't think politics are helping at all right now. But November 4th is coming, so that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for context, tonight that we're recording this, the president is having his own town hall because he refused to participate in a virtual debate, which I'll tell you right now, it's pretty easy to talk to somebody on the internet. This is 2020. Of all the bad things, this is a good thing. Yeah, so we could be doing and watching that, and I'm
Yeah.
glad we're not doing that. So, I'm glad. So, what do I do with that then? So, if I get that, and something I've been learning, I've been trying to do better, and I think I got it from Jared Bias when I talked with him, where he's like, just tell me why, tell me more, tell me, just asking a lot more questions. But I have about zero patience for racism and for people that can't honor the divine in every single animated thing, not in just in this world, in all of them. And I don't know how to more emphatically say that I sometimes can't just hit block or just go off. And what one of my friends will say, he's like, Seth, you come in like with like too many hammers. Like you suck up all the space and you leave no room for anyone to talk. And you bring in so much facts that people are like, back away slowly. And then they just leave, which isn't helpful to the conversation. So for people listening, are like, yeah, I feel alive. Like I feel moved to talk about this. I've been praying about this. I've been reading about this. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about this. I've been doing this. I've been doing that. I bought your book. I bought Drew Hart's book. I went ahead and bought Ibrahim Kendi's book. Like I bought all the books and I'm doing the thing and I feel woke, air quotes. How do they approach that with their family, with their social media community? Because that's become a new form of family in a way that would be helpful as opposed to causing more problems.
Well, I think so, and this is where I like art for a number of reasons. I think there is a desire for all of us to connect deeply, and this is like the whole fully known, fully loved thing. Like we all want that, but it's risky as hell. Like that's a hard thing. You know what I'm saying? The moment you start becoming more and more honest, the more you become more vulnerable, and they could love you less. But we're so wired for approval and for that head nod and for that yes. It's a dangerous business. It's a dangerous business. And I think that what art has a chance to do is to not say this is the fact. It's simply to say this is how I feel. Um, I have I'm not as patient in the heat of the moment. I'm just not. Like it's a reality. I'm broken, man. And so when I come to a conversation and I'm trying to win an argument, I'm speaking facts, and the more my facts are not being heard, the more my feelings are getting in it, Like, so now it's like an amalgam of fact and feeling all together, and it's like none of this is really getting where I'm trying to go.
Yeah.
So versus arguing facts and then my feelings get hurt, I simply want to express my feelings. And if you don't agree with the facts of it, that's fine. But again, the whole response of the church is not to agree with why the kids are mourning, just mourn with them. You don't have to agree with that. Like expression, I think, is a lost art that because we were kind of moved into this, digital age and information age, we've never had so much resource to back our own opinions in the history of humanity, And so it's really hard to get beyond that level of let me hear you just to argue you. If I feel like we're in an argument. So I would encourage anybody, even if you're not an artist, you don't have to be an artist, but find ways to have conversations that are intentional, that you intentionally cannot win. There's no way there could be a winner in the conversation. If I'd say you hurt my feelings, well, then it's like, well, no, I didn't do this. It's like, okay, my feelings are hurt. Like I am hurting. Yeah. That's me. That ain't got nothing to do with you. You ain't got to hold that. But like expressing lament, and that's the thing about biblical lament, right? Is biblical lament is I'm aiming all of this frustration towards God. Like it's towards God first. My unrest, my frustration, it's all towards God. Now there are things I can blame for this too, but I first find myself reconciling my own brokenness, my own pain, with someone who promises He's my Father. Like He hears it. You know what I'm saying? And so starting there, I think whatever comes next, and this is Jesus in John 15, where He's like, abide first, be in the vine first. And then verse 8, this is to my Father's glory, you bear fruit. Whatever fruit comes with you just abiding in that feeling, that motion, that space, whatever comes from that is fruit. Whatever comes from connecting, He'll work with that. So I think finding ways that we can just express feelings and emotion and lament together that aren't going to win an argument, I think is going to be key to figuring out whatever the next stage of community looks like. Because right now, communities, it's in chaos, it's in flux. We don't know.
Yeah. Who knows what it'll be? Nobody knows what it is. Community is where you can be honest. That's what I think community is. It's where you can be honest. Sure. So you used some big words earlier, and I want to make sure. So Spirit of God in the Old Testament, in Genesis, that's Ruach, right? Am I saying that correct? Ruach?
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, and I forget where I read it. He said that in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they rendered that as, I'm giving up when Jesus is talking about, I'm leaving and something else is happening. But
Yep.
John is the only one that says, I'm now giving you the Spirit, the same word, that I'm giving you the same Ruach, so that when I leave, you can now come alive. Like death is dead, and now you're alive. So I do want to put that in. It's not really in any of the dirges, but yeah. Mostly I needed to ramble while I got my thoughts right for this. So you got a word in here about the N words we weren't allowed to say. And I debated as to whether or not I wanted to bring this up, because to be honest, I read this really slow multiple times because I just, yeah. So I don't even know how to pivot into it, but there's a part on here. The part that I got is not an N-word. Obviously the N-word is the N-word, but there are other N-words in here that I wasn't prepared for. Like N-words we weren't allowed to say are no, never, not again, nice day, officer, our native language, not forgotten, and they're stripped from your mouths like a smooth mouth screw, which just that last sentence is, I don't even know what a smooth mouth screw is. Is that a stripped screw? Is that what that is? Smooth? Yeah. So can you go over that? So, because that's just, I was uncomfortable with all of that. And I think that's appropriate and adequate and probably the point. But
yeah. It's worth noting that because we're so used to facts, we typically get books that and we don't know how to do with poetry much in our culture these days. We want the facts presented, agree with me or inform me. Like that's the point. A book of poetry is to do what I'm excited to hear what it's doing. It's to make you uncomfortable.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see, like I'm literally like I don't like this.
Yeah, well, and that's the point. It's like surgery. Like I think we need this. I think we need this. But it's hard. It is hard. So the N words we weren't allowed to say is a book that I had to pray about and talk with several of my friends about, white and black, if I should put this in the book or not. And I'll talk about why it stayed in a second. But the overall idea is, especially with that stanza you brought up, there are parts of not just my vernacular, parts of my culture that are kind of taboo in my church. And I don't think they're taboo to God, which raises a question about who's wrong here. Is it my culture? Is it God, or is it the church? Like something's not meshing. Square peg, round hole. Somehow there's not a fit. And so the poem is simply it's raising that question for you to figure out in your own space, right? Like I've had to wrestle with this. Whenever I'm around my family, that's the word I use loosely, the term of endearment. It's a conversation amongst brothers and sisters and fam. Like that's just part of our language. And yet I know where I can and I cannot say it. And that's fine. That's a part of the world we live in. It's broken. It's janky. Same way I know what towns I can't go to at night. The same way I know what words I can and can't use in front of white company. And that for me would be okay in like corporate America. But the fact that I bite my tongue in church is an interesting thing. I say nigga when I pray. Like me and God, I don't have a filter in front of him because he knows me anyway. Like he knows exactly who I am. And he knows how I've been shaped. And so as I explore more about why is this particular word or this particular part of my culture taboo, you learn that there's an ugly history with the word.
Yeah.
But the word is more symbolic of just our relationship in general. There's been some ugly history. I think one of the lines is like, there's a pretty hard fork in the road as we've been journeying together. And at some point in time, there became a narrative that we are in a place now. And those words were from back when we weren't in that place. But we still hold those words. We don't agree that we're in the same place, And I think as a church, there's been a culture built, and because culture is not a hard power. Culture is a soft power. It's the way in which everybody is moving. It's the words that we do and do not say. That nothing is blatantly. There's no sign on the window that say what I can and can't say. But I know it and I feel it. We've created a culture where if I were to go back home and invite all of my friends who still talk the way I talked 2 years ago, who still talk the way I talk when I'm around my family, they would not be welcome in my church. I think that's an issue for what the church is, because they would be welcome at the feet of Jesus. They'd be welcome with their language. And so, yeah, I just feel like I want people to wrestle with the same tension that all Black folks are wrestling with, or at least they acknowledge that we're wrestling with this, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let me also say I really enjoy poetry, and honestly, mostly rap music is like my resting music because of the
All right.
poetry,
Yeah.
not the garbage on the radio. Like I've been listening to No Big Deal lately. I don't know if you've listened to him at all.
Dilly. Yeah, yeah, Dilly.
Oh my gosh, like I just laugh. And my wife's like, people, you have to pay attention, but there's so many subtle references. Like, that's just hilarious.
Yeah.
But there's a part in there. So you know, getting with that, I forget the word you said with the screw. Let me pull it back up. Yeah, the smooth mouth screw. But I find it hilarious that about 5 stanzas later, you basically say, I make a poor handyman. My wife fills my toolbox with a list of numbers to contact professionals. I mean, I just like that play on words because it does
Yeah.
connect the two. Because honestly, you kind of change gears there.
Yeah.
When it says number 4, I don't know if that stands for. I have no idea why that formatting's there. I have no idea why the 1, 2, 3, 4 is there. But let me just say how much I really like. I laugh. When I got there, I'm like, oh, see, you see what he did? I see what he did there. But yeah. What is CP time? Are you referencing Roy Wood Jr.? Is that what that is? Because that's a Daily Show skit. You know what I'm talking about, or no?
Uh-uh.
Oh, you know the black guy on the Daily Show. He's like the overweight, heavyset guy. I think he was also in The Office,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So he has a thing where he gets, he put his tie on and he dials it way back in an educated way, and he'll explain like I was watching one for Columbus Day, I think, and he's like, let's talk about explorers, like the black ones, like the first guy that went to the North Pole. He was black though, so we can't talk about him. And he just kept on going. He's talking about,
Yeah.
but he's like, but it's called CP time. I think stands for colored people time. I'm not sure if that's how you're using it. So
Same
when I
exact.
read that, I busted out laughing because all I could see was Roy Wood Jr. in my head
Yeah.
on repeat. What is that? Like, he's never explained it. So what do you mean when you say CP time? Like,
So it's I don't say it's a coded. It is a cultural reference. So if a Black person is late somewhere, the assumption is he's moving on CP time. It's colored people time. Um, it's a jab. And so that line of the poem, I think the way I use it is white folks showed up on CP time. So there's a assumption that Black people are always like late to stuff. And we feel like white folks are just not kind of getting on board with some of the social justice things. And it's like, y'all been on CP time. You were coming the whole time. You're on your way. Just took you a little while longer to get here.
Yeah. And so that's the reason I bring that up. So that whole thing, and I think that's actually called "And Now What?" Yeah, that's what it's called. And so you say in there, if a movement, you say, so is it a movement if we go nowhere? Amen to the white friends that have joined in the prayer line, and amen to the blacked out photos that hang like a curtain over your social media platforms. And you go on to keep going and keep going. But I'm fairly certain that the demographic of this show, and just because of the way that the world works, that many of the listeners of the show are not going to be not white, like, and that's a bad sentence, but mostly. So now what? Like, flesh that out, because I feel like a lot of people are like, great, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to do this at my church. I don't know how, like, now, like literally now what? Like, so as a technical minister, like now what? That's going to be a thing. That's the name of the show right there. That's the whole podcast.
Technical minister. I joked about starting one. I might take that, Jim. Like,
dude, you can take. So I stole the name of this show from my same friend Josh. That when we were talking about things, was like, dude, you can't say that at church. I'm like, that's mine.
the name.
That's mine. Yeah, and I'm never giving him any money for that at all. So
The
yeah,
podcast is bringing in the dough, man.
something like that. Yeah. So now what? Like, and it matters even more. Like, it doesn't matter who wins the election. We got problems. It doesn't matter who wins the election. Black people are still being murdered. It doesn't matter who wins the election. Qualified immunity is still a thing. Like, it doesn't matter. Churches are still going to divide people and make it the most racially segregated Zoom hour in the country, because it's not the hour anymore. It's a Zoom hour. So whatever that looks like for the COVID there. So now what?
So I think for me, I've been spending a lot of time in Galatians 3 and trying to wrap my head around Paul's language there, where he's like, there's no more slave or free, Jew or Gentile, male or female. And that language coming from Paul, like, is really weird, because Paul thinks that there's still, he's very clear that there's still Jew and Gentile. He spends a good chunk of his ministry ministering differently to them. He thinks that they're still male and female. He even has opinions about what males can do and what women can't do. And so he doesn't seem to be making an argument that we are now genderless, raceless, or ethnicity cleansed. Like he's not making any kind of argument for sameness. He's making a solid argument for oneness. And I think that the church has kind of confused the two. That there's an expectation that, okay, now we all gotta be the same and get on board together. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm still wired the way I'm wired. Like the language I use, by and large, is not sinful. I'm still gonna be me. Like I'm still gonna be who I am. And what Jesus is doing, at least those of us who believe in like the whole resurrection thing, is he's making a new humanity. You know, like it's his whole thing. 1 John 3. He's like, we don't know what we're going to be at, but we know when we see him, we'll be as he is. Like we'll be transformed into whatever this new humanity Christ is. That's what we're striving towards. And so there is a desire for a future oneness in Christ Jesus that I'm all about. Any attempts at sameness, any attempts at whitewashing or blackwashing, which I don't know what that is, but I've heard counter arguments in that way.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't, but people, again, when you want to argue a thing, you ain't even on facts no more.
Doesn't make any sense because whiteness is the default textbook. Like every page in there is it's a different topic. Anyway.
The point being though is I think one of the lines in the poem is like, a bridge is trying to take you somewhere, right? Yeah. I think we kind of can't get on the same page. We can't even decide on the bridge that we should take if we can't decide we all want to go to the same place. I don't have any critique for how people try to move forward towards unity and oneness. I openly reject sameness. I openly reject that God wants us to forget who we are ethnically. 3 Revelations, people of all nation tribes are showing up, laying down crowns. Apparently, we coming from places. And he's cool with that. And he's glorified in it. And it's all his image. It's all been touched by his hand. He loves it. And so, yeah, I feel like whatever oneness looks like for our time and our context, I'm all about that. And I do leave that poem the poem's a list of prose. It doesn't offer any answers. It's for you to wrestle with.
That's why I asked here, so that hopefully you
No, that's the point though, right? Because again, we want, like, hand me an answer. And my answer is the same thing. Breath of God. Like I don't know how he's gonna do it. I have exhausted myself emotionally, spiritually. Like I have no more to give in arguments to white folks who don't want to listen, or new phenomena, Black folks who don't believe it's an issue either. Like I don't have any argument for that. I have a bleeding heart for myself and for you, and I desire for this oneness. I've seen it in my context, the area I was discipled in. It was a handful of artists while I was in college. And it was a mixed community. There was a white pastor, he's white dude, you know what I'm saying? But Black kids come to the church, white kids, Hispanic kids come to the church, and like we actually had an all Hispanic service that wasn't just like where all the Mexicans go. Like, you know what I'm saying? It was like, this is just we sing this kind of genre music here, and no matter what you look like, you come to it. Like I've seen oneness before that was clunky and weird, but beautiful. Yeah. And that's what it looked like for us. I'm not saying that has to look that for everybody else. I've just caught a glimpse of what oneness could be. And I don't want to settle for anything that's less than that. I think sameness is a settling for less than.
Yeah. It's been a while since I asked this question, but it matters. It's not theological at all, but it's extremely important. So you're in Texas now, from California and Mississippi. So but you've been all over the continent. So being that I'm from Texas, I take this personal, and depending on the answer, I might just hit delete on the whole thing.
Right.
Whataburger or In-N-Out Burger?
All right, so I'm a loyalist, as we talked about with basketball. I have to say In-N-Out. I have to.
Deleted.
I have to. and can I make a counter argument?
Sure.
Because here's where I get into like the whole like, now I got to bring facts up.
This is how I feel.
Dude, but Texas is a cult. and people here, like I could say I like In-N-Out more. I like it. I like it. I don't have to like it. What you like, I like it more. There's no space for that here. Like, you have assaulted. You don't see these come and take it tattoos on me, cuz? Like, you can't not like my burger. I think y'all got better fries. I'll go that far.
But I haven't had a Whataburger in 20 years, but I think
Yeah.
that's why I like it so much, because it's like I hadn't tasted it in forever. I, I'm, I'm, I am, yeah, I'm asking for the drip of water on my tongue, and that drip of water is Whataburger, at the moment. So see what I did? That's blasphemous right there. So,
Wow.
all right. So serious note. So a question I've been asking everyone this year: when you say God to someone, or the divine, or whatever words you want to say, what are you saying? Like, what is that? How is that? All the things.
Yeah. I think that when I have a conversation with my mom, I was raised just my mom, single parent home, all that stuff like that. When I have a conversation with my mom, I can tell the spaces when it's just love, when it's just for me. I can tell when fear gets into the conversation. I can tell the tone of her voice. I can tell when it's just like when she has an agenda. Like, I think she's crazy for me, but even she's a human, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with my mom when I was 17 years old. I said, "Mom, I want to be a pilot," and she was like, "Black man in America, you need a degree, no pilot school, you're going to college." I heard her voice coded in fear,
Mm-hmm.
Not that it was my mom, but there was that was that fear in that. On the flip side, I came and told my mom, "Hey, I'm adopting a little girl," and there was nothing but like joy and excitement. And not that the circumstances not necessarily what it is, but I can hear in her the difference of, this is just my love for you coming out versus this is my fear, my concern, whatever. Same thing in my wife, my daughter, same thing in conversations here. Like, I feel like whatever that genuine, pure sense of life, that energy can't be created or destroyed. There's something like pure about where we come from. Something pure about what love does and how it connects people. I think that is a window into who God is. I think it's a breadcrumbing of sorts back to who He is ultimately. When I think of God, I think of the pureness of life, the pureness of love. I think of holiness, not in like I'm behaving,
Mm-hmm.
but holy, kind of like in that Old Testament sense, where it's other. It's what we're all surrounded by, but we're all chasing toward because it's not fully here yet. So yeah, that's a loaded way of saying, and I think it's Jesus. I think Jesus embodies that in a way that is that only He has done. I think of that First Corinthians 13. This is like a description of who love is. It just sounds like a savior. So yeah, that's my jumbled up leaning towards.
Yeah, yeah. We'll plug the places, and then if you're still willing, I'd love to get you to read a bit, and then
Yeah.
I'll figure out where to put that. And I'll ask if you have a different one you want to do. I don't remember if I even told you the one I wanted you to read or not. But if you feel like a different one would fit better, you know them better than I do. But plug the places. So where do people go? I tried to find you on Twitter, couldn't find you. Maybe you're not on Twitter.
Not cool.
But it's like, so like, where do you want people to go get the book, etc.? Like, where
Yeah.
do they go?
So we sang at dirge.com. You can find the book there. You can follow me on the Instagrams. Lo the Poet, it's LOTHEPOET. You can send your boy an email because I love these conversations. Lothepoet@gmail.com. And yeah, I think I'm still on Facebook. Lo Alaman. I'm not cool enough for Twitter, man. It's a place to be super opinionated, and I got enough of that.
Yeah. So I don't quite understand Twitter. No, I mean Instagram. Twitter's become my place though. It's like Facebook's where I go because that's the algorithm that runs the world at the moment. But Twitter's like where I go. Let me put it this way. So a theologian, basically, let me back up. All those links are going to be in the show notes for the laziness that for people who need to go down and just click the button. Because I will say, that's the world we live in, and we need it easy. So I'll make it easy. However, yeah, someone said, put a song in my head in 5 words. So on Twitter, I said, "Never Gonna Give You Up." To which the responses were like, "Oh, see what he did there." And then my second response was just a GIF of him Rickrolling.
Yeah, come on.
That's Twitter to me. I don't know how to do that on Instagram. You know what I mean?
It's so, and maybe it's a generational thing, but Instagram, it's that and more. Like, and we're such a visual society now.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't know half the things I think I know, but you show me an image and my mind just goes to those places. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good, man. I really appreciate you coming on. Really
Sure.
have enjoyed it so very much. It's been a pleasure, man. I'd
Come
like to
on.
do it again. I don't know what we'll talk on, but we'll figure it out. I'd love to do it again. I don't always laugh in these, so I like laughing.
I'm about it. I'm so
So,
about it.
yeah, the one I wanted you to read was "When Protest and Prayer Are the Same Song," because I
Mm.
thought it served dual purpose for a lot of things. Just overall. Unless you feel like a different one maybe would be more impactful. I also like that it wasn't crazy long either. And I don't know where I'll put it in. So I've only done this a few times. I had Caitlin Curtis read a prayer out of her book. And then I had like 18 people email me, all of them saying the same thing. And then I figured out how to mix that together, which was the biggest file. I think it's a 400 meg MP3. Yeah, so there's an episode called The Eternal Current, which a book about the examine and figuring out how to have unforced rhythms of grace. But there's a prayer at the end. And so I had the guy that wrote the liturgy read it. And then I mixed in, I think it's 26 voices until eventually, but that's hard because nobody speaks at the same tempo. So I was literally chopping up people's.
And you had to EQ that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I left some of that alone because I've mixed people in and out until eventually it built into just one huge. I was trying to basically make church
Yeah.
in a podcast. You know what I mean?
What's that one called?
The Eternal Currents. And you can actually just fast forward to the end. It's literally the last thing if you don't. But I enjoyed the whole episode. But I'm biased. I like all of them. But yeah, if you're willing to read that, I'd love it, and I'll figure out where to put it.
Easy. Let me pull it up because I got it somewhere on the phone. Oh, this is gonna be fun to do. So
You
before
being
writing,
sarcastic or no?
no, I like a lot. I don't get a chance to read poems very often.
Mm-hmm.
I do like a spoken word kind of form. And this is one of the first times I think I've had a chance to like read from the book. So I kind of envision what that looks like, and I'm excited about doing it.
Yeah, cool.
What section is that in? I think it's I'm listening to.
It's about 40. This says it's 44% into the book, at least on my Kindle app. And I can give you a page number in a minute if you want.
I think I got it. 47.
47.
Boom, I'm there. All right. Ain't the keyboard tired? And it's sick of being forced to sound like something it isn't. And it's sustained for too long. And its buttons been pressed too much. And it fed up with being a plaything for inexperienced hands. Let it respond. Let it raise the volume on its frustrations. Let the depths of its laments be transposed to a key that silence can't lock up. Let it hurt out loud. Let it be loud enough for all to hear. What a beating the drum takes. How oppressive the sticks must seem, could see one strike as coincidence, but how long before we call the cadence systemic? How many blows can it take before it can't take anymore? Let it speak out. Let percussion come from its protests. Let it sound off. Let it push back. Let a rhythm be born for how many times it says no and doesn't crack and doesn't break and still is. So tight the violin strings are pulled. So firm its neck held. So sharp the bow cuts along its vulnerable body. So agonizing it must be to be sawed into. Let it cry. Let its aching be an audible groan. Let the sound it makes unsettle whoever hears it, whoever won't tune it out, whoever will listen. I've known life to be a sweet song. I've known living to be a complicated sheet of music. I've known many to fear Christ to be a critic of suffering, forgetting that he too was a man broken into a sad song. His body laid into a silent tomb. His resurrection, an invitation to keep quiet no longer. The Father is a good conductor. He has staff lines for hands, an honest space for us to place all of our notes, whether beautiful or broken. I've sung many sorrows to him. I've been a playlist of emotions. I cry out before him time and time again. And each time, he listens.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Man.
Yeah.
Bro, this is good.